today. Of course, the world lost a great one today. Justin Trudeau, Canada's prime minister.
Justin, we hardly knew you.
Exactly. It's been only 9 years. He announces his resignation from office.
The holidays. I've also had a chance to reflect and have had long talks with my family about our future. Throughout the course of my career, any success I have personally achieved has been because of their support and with their encouragement. So last night over dinner, I told my kids about the decision that I'm sharing with you today.
Also that my dad is not my dad.
I intend to resign as party leader, as prime minister, after the party selects its next leader through a robust, nationwide, competitive process. Last night, I asked the president of the Liberal Party to begin that process. This country deserves a real choice in the next election, and it has become clear to me that if I'm having to fight internal battles, I cannot be the best option in that election.
Well, I'll give him, he went away easier than Joe Biden. Got to give him that. Right? That's saying something.
It's true. Still mentally intact.
Yeah, and he's still mentally intact. Canada's Justin Trudeau says he will resign as party leader. That's right. And prime minister, NPR reports. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announced plans to resign on Monday after loud calls from within his own party to step down. Ending weeks of speculation, Trudeau said he will no longer lead his Liberal Party, but will remain in office until a successor is selected. Momentum for a Trudeau exit has built steadily since his deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland, a close ally who also served as finance minister, resigned in stunning fashion on December 16th. Yes, that foreshadowed this by a few weeks. Trudeau has been prime minister for nearly a decade after winning office at just 43 years old, but his popularity has plummeted with Canadians who blame Trudeau for higher costs of living and other problems. His tenure has also been hit by a string of crises and missteps, and increasingly his political allies have criticized his policies. Taking a handful of questions from reporters, Trudeau defended his achievements in office, particularly his economic policies, saying he has worked to help Canada's middle class and to ease poverty. He repeatedly cited internal battles as the reason for his resignation, saying Parliament has been paralyzed for months. So Rachel Blevins says another friend of Zelensky points out, yes, who supported escalation of NATO's war against Russia and leaves behind a legacy of increasingly authoritarian policies. No lies detected there. Deep Barrett says resignation of Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau should be of no surprise and inconsequential heading into upcoming Canadian parliamentary elections. Already had record low support and approval rating. Poor economy made it worse. Conservative Poliveri likely new PM. That's right, Pierre leading in the polls there. Margaret Kimberly points out Justin Trudeau, Canada's blackface prime minister, resigns. He also invited a Nazi to speak to Canada's parliament. That's right. That's right. Maybe the reason, says Benjamin Rubenstein, disgraced Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is set to resign in shame is because he spent his time talking to genocidal freaks about things that aren't happening instead of doing his job and helping Canadians. There you go, highlighting that article there from just a couple weeks ago. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau speaks with President of Israel, Isaac Herzog. So we'll take a trip down memory lane to pay tribute to Justin Trudeau. Flat Out Truth says never forget what dictator Trudeau did to the truckers because they were unvaccinated and free. Here's this piece of video.
Are faced with citizens' anxiety. We have a choice to make. Do we exploit that anxiety or do we allay it? Because a fair and successful world is a peaceful one. We believe we should confront anxiety with a clear plan to deal with its root causes.
You know, it never occurred to me until watching video with his voice and voiceover. He really does sound like an audiobook. He really sounds like a book on tape. Like, just listen to his voice. It sounds like a guy who gets paid to record audiobooks.
And we believe we should bring people together around shared purposes, because what is the alternative?
But the Germans were not being beckoned to Versailles to negotiate, but rather to have their fates determined for them. We'll continue this in our next chapter. Boop. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like an audiobook. It sounds like a book on tape.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like somebody with the skills to have not lost power 7 years ago. Like, it's amazing that he's been in power this long.
Well, this is the other thing, man. You know, I remember back in like the, you know, mid 2010s when he first burst onto the scene. He was a big heartthrob. Like the ladies loved him. The girls loved him.
Him and Obama and these homoerotic tableaus. Yeah.
Which, you know, look, I mean, I'll say this. He seems like a fairly handsome guy. But the minute he opens his mouth, I mean, I'm sorry. Like, I don't see how it goes any further than that.
To exploit anxiety?
I mean, a one-night stand.
To turn it into fear and blame? To reject others because they look or speak or pray differently than we do? Every single day, we need to choose hope over fear, diversity over division.
Wow. Diversity over division in Canada. Mind you. So, yes, that is quite the juxtaposition there of rhetoric versus that imagery of the trucker crackdown. CNN contributor Scott Jennings says, God bless those truckers. So as news broke of this, he thought of that very example that we just showed you right there. So let's play this. This is fairly brief.
Gentlemen, thank you. I think. You want to talk about Justin Trudeau?
I wanted to talk about Canada.
You're talking about Canada?
God bless the truckers. That's what I'm saying. Well, there's a direct line from those truckers to what's happening today. Good riddance.
I'm sleeping. It's only Monday. It's my first day back. This is hard on me. Sarah, please take it.
I'm going to take it from here because guess what I'm going to do? Talk about Canada. Yes, ma'am. We've got some breaking news.
Real professional newsroom they got going over there. Glenn Greenwald, yes, one of my favorite stories of 2024, maybe my favorite, was when Zelensky visited Trudeau and they went to the Canadian Parliament to give a standing ovation to a 98-year-old Ukrainian hero, quote unquote, who it turned out was a voluntary Nazi fighter for the Waffen-SS in World War II. Yeah, who could forget this?
A standing ovation for a Ukrainian veteran of the Second World War,
who fought for Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98.
Invited by House Speaker Anthony Rota to witness Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's address to Parliament, Yaroslav Hunka is one of his constituents.
He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service.
That was the jubilant scene Friday. Now new details have emerged about that war service MPs applauded. Hunka served in the 1st Galician Division, a volunteer unit commanded by the Nazis.
The unit is complicit in the Holocaust.
This Jewish human rights campaigner says there's no defending former soldiers like Hunka.
You swore allegiance to Hitler, and you were involved with the massacre of civilians. So it doesn't matter if you try and claim that you were defending against communism. You were still involved with the Nazi war machine.
The division's history is murky. Its volunteers united by a desire to take on the Soviet Union, says this academic.
For them, the ultimate evil was Moscow occupation.
Right. Communism, the ultimate evil, not Nazism. It's a common list of priorities, I should say, common ranking of priorities amongst the liberals. What did they say? Liberals will choose fascism over socialism every time.
Yeah. You want to see how badly Trudeau destroyed that country? When was the last time you heard an American say, if so-and-so wins the election, I'm moving to Canada?
Well,
they don't say that anymore.
They don't really say that anymore. That's true. You don't really hear that.
No.
You hear Donald Trump saying he wants to make Canada the 51st state.
Yeah. Now they're like, I'll move to Greece. I'll move to Thailand. They don't say it. They don't say I'll move to Canada.
It's true. You don't hear that as an example anymore. And then who could forget, obviously, Justin Trudeau blames Russian propaganda for Canadian Parliament honoring a Nazi. Yes, trying to spin the excuse machine here.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened. The speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and, by extension, to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it.
You brought a great character example there too, as well. So Ryan Knight, who runs the Power to the People account, proud socialist, to me has it exactly right. Justin Trudeau announces he is resigning as Prime Minister of Canada. Liberalism is failing all over the world as the material conditions of the working class decline and reactionary forces on the right gain power. Yep. Yes, that's what you're seeing all over the world. And this was something that would have happened here had it not been for the pandemic, which I will say was very convenient. I will say that it came along at a very convenient time for the
the
liberal
virus
class
of unknown origin.
Right. Yeah. It came about at a very convenient time for the liberal class to sort of regain a foothold that they had lost and were going to lose again in a landslide here in the United States. Had it not been for the pandemic, the liberals got a second lifeline of sorts with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And that kind of saved the Democrats' ass in the midterms in 2022. But now that we're 4 years out from COVID and you see a common trend is that governments in power during those pandemic into post-pandemic years are having a hard time maintaining power now. Parties who presided over that period of time are paying a political price because of how all of that was handled, not just from a public health standpoint, since every country kind of varied in that way, but economically. The shock to the system was just too great for these political parties to withstand. And now they are paying a very heavy price for it. Now, Trudeau's reign was, as we just saw, I mean, a tragic comedy of errors and of ridiculousness. But it's the same ridiculousness as the liberal class here, as the Obama years
Worldwide.
into the Biden years worldwide. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. This is a real sea change of a year all over the world. And unfortunately, in my opinion, as someone with left politics, the populist left has not been able to gain that foothold. It's easier for populist right-wing parties to do that because populist right-wing parties, as we just went over in very thorough detail with Whitney Webb, do not challenge the consolidation of capital.
No,
and
they
so
don't
because
face the
they
same
don't challenge
resistance.
right, so they don't face the same resistance because Palantir can work with Donald Trump.
Right.
They
can work better with Donald Trump.
They can work better with Donald Trump if they strip all the pretense of democracy and
They don't have to pretend.
responsibility and equity and all that shit. Right. They don't have to keep the mask on anymore. And so it's a lot more easily integrated with capitalist power structures than any populist left movement. But as Ryan points out here, liberalism just couldn't hold. And this is something, I feel vindicated about. I'm not happy about it, but I do feel vindicated. This is what we have been saying for now just about a decade since Trudeau took power. I mean, in 2015, we were saying you are not going to be able to gloss over the cruelties of capitalism with a sort of I will say, benign neoliberalism, because
Right.
you can have neoliberalism of the Reagan variety or the Obama, right?
Right.
You're not going to be able to smooth that over for much longer. This is
Right.
going to implode. Liberalism will implode. And now it has imploded. And now we're here. We would have been here 4 years ago. There's not a doubt in my mind. Absent COVID, we would have been here
Sure.
4 years ago. That
Sure.
gave them a lifeline. They were not able to seize control of power for long because they are ultimately uninterested in improving the material conditions of working class people. They are just
Right.
totally uninterested in that. And now
There's
they're paying
no-
a price all over the world.
Right. Well, there's no rationale for a Wall Street owned left party. And that's been the problem with neoliberalism around the world. In America, you have a particularly extreme and blatant version of it, but it's been the same everywhere. Neoliberalism is basically selling out the state to capital.
Right.
And covering up that process by appealing to culture war issues, keeping people distracted with these increasingly bizarre and arcane debates where you've completely left the normal range of human concerns when you're talking about whether children should be at drag shows. But that's what they want. They want you fighting over these just absolutely pointless ideas that don't really affect 99.99% of people. Anything to avoid a discussion about economics. For the right wing, who don't give a shit about these people either, because their whole philosophy, because their whole ethos is bootstraps and pull yourself up and make your own way, they don't really have to offer anything. They just have to sell this mythos. Yeah, no, look, you get rid of the immigrants and you close the borders and you crack down on the criminals, and hey, it's going to be jobs for everybody. Right? Don't you want to be self-sufficient? And hey, in America, things got bad enough that finally the women said, you know what? If I need an abortion, I'll take a bus.
Right.
I'm just not voting for this anymore. And that was it. That was it. There's no rationale for their existence. And really, as people started to find out pretty quickly, there's no real rationale for supporting these right-wingers either, but there's less of an obvious ideological inconsistency. They're promising something. It seems more plausible, whereas the liberals are just love Trump's hate. There's just nothing there.
Right. It's all you're basically making an appeal to emotion. That's basically what liberal politics is.
Virtue.
It's all an appeal
about
to
virtue.
virtue. Yeah. Yes. And on the right side of that, on the right side of things, as you talked about, they just have to package a certain mythos. Well, we just have to put things in your hands, right? As the individual. And if things are in your hands as the individual, then guess what? If it doesn't work out for you, whose fault?
It's on you.
It's yours, right? Because we deferred to the individual. And what Whitney Webb was talking about earlier is that it's very easy to trick people into voting for their own subjugation, especially when you package it in this way. And especially when the people who are corralling people into this worldview are people like Elon Musk, who really seek to consolidate power irrespective of who is actually in office, of what the state actually represents. Once tech grows to the point where it can exert the kind of influence over the society that it now does, it becomes much less important who the president is. Right. And so that game plan fuses very nicely with this sort of libertarian worldview, with this sort of libertarian orthodoxy that defers so much to the private sector anyway.
Right.
And here you are. And this is going to happen all over the world. And, there's talk about, Donald Trump he's now tweeting Canada should become the 51st state. As bad as Trudeau has fucked shit up, I'd be shocked if you have popular will saying that Canadians want to join the United States. Why? Because at the end of the day, after all said and done, If Canada were to join the United States, you know what they would lose? Healthcare.
Healthcare.
Healthcare. Right.
Yep.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, that's what you're being corralled into, right?
Yep.
When you turn power over to the right wing, you're giving up your healthcare, right? I mean, and which is going to make your life so much harder. And so it's a sad situation, but it's something that we saw coming for a decade. We've been screaming this was going to happen for a decade now. Ignored, smeared. How will breaking up the banks stop racism? Hillary Clinton said. Well, not breaking up the banks didn't stop racism either, did it?
Well, no. And if you remember, they were gleeful about getting rid of us. Remember Chuck Schumer? Oh, for every blue-collar Democrat we lose, we're going to pick up 2 Republicans in the suburbs. I remember all these mindless libs say, we don't need you. We don't need you, people. We don't need you, Bernie Bros. And we told them, like, you're going to see, man, you're losing a generation of voters. You're not just losing voters in this election. You're creating a structural disadvantage that in the end is going to bite you in the ass. And it did.
That materialized too. I mean, look at who the core constituencies of the Bernie campaigns were: Latinos and young men. Right. And where did Trump make the biggest inroads this time? Latinos, young men. Boom.
Yep.
That tells the story. All right, let's take some more super chats. And we got a couple of Israel stories before we go. Let me open this up here. Sorry, I had it open. What the hell happened? Yeah. Okay. All right, what do we got here? Kuznetsky Bassane, where is this? Where do we leave off? Okay, there we go. Yeah, John G, thanks for the $10. How come Whitney Webb doesn't mention Steve Bannon last long interview with Epstein or Bill Barr in her books? I've not read her books. I gotta read her books now.
I mean, I just went through quite a lot of her work. She was talking about Steve Bannon pretty recently as a Goldman Sachs guy, at least on social media.
Anita M. Stevens says, Whitney, you're awesome. Would love to see you having a conversation with Jeffrey Sachs or Candace Owens. That would be epic. Thank you. Love from UK. Kuznetsky Bassane, thanks to the $9.99. Whitney rocks. Oh, we got a super chat from Jimmy Dore here. Looks like we got a super chat from Jimmy Dore. Thanks for supporting the show. JFC, as usual, Whitney is incredibly informative and thoroughly depressing. Great show.
Yes. Thank you, JD.
Thank you. Should put that. That should be our. That should be the Due Dissidence motto. Incredibly informative and thoroughly depressing. That's a good way to sum up what we do here. Well, thank you. Yes. Glad you liked it. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, just so much information in so little time. Really,
she's encyclopedic.
Yeah, encyclopedic. Yeah. I could see why she, is down on AI. She's like, well, what do I need AI for?
Well,
with a mind like hers, what she need AI for?
Yeah.
Black Spock, thanks, Keaton and Russell. Great interview with Whitney Webb. Thank you, Black Spock. Ernest Dowson, this is sickest shit. Insurrection, a few-hour FBI instigated riot without a gunshot fired is a fucking insurrection? Yeah, you got that. I agree. I agree with that. JT stayed in power because the conservatives were even more hated. Now we're going back to them. The current con leader hasn't even applied for top security clearance. Oh, interesting. Sparky says, who needs rare earth minerals and other natural resources from Ukraine when Canada and Greenland are right next door for the taking? Progressive lefty, the libs and cons in Canada are the same as the Dems and the GOP. It's a uniparty. Members switch back and forth depending on the way the wind blows. Helmet Head says, Whitney Webb echoes many smart best way to use the internet minds in that we should connect through each other's independent websites more than anything. I agree, but tough to do. It is tough to do, especially now in the social media age. Although, this is the other thing. I mean, this is too inside baseball. We don't have to get all into this, but I knew Elon was full of shit the minute he throttled the Substack links. Because Substack, if you're serious about building free speech infrastructure on the internet, Substack is an amazing tool. It's a one-stop shop. You can create a multimedia online magazine for free on Substack. That's totally free speech. You can put videos on there. You can put audio podcasts. You can do articles. And it's such an amazing tool. If you were serious about free speech, you would not throttle Substack links because you claim that they stole your proprietary fucking whatever. First of all, I mean, the whole idea of Elon claiming that, Twitter has a proprietary thing with the like
Right.
features.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
ridiculous. You bought, first of all,
Yeah.
you didn't invent it. You bought it. Number one. Number two, who cares? Who cares?
Well, like everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think she's on the right track. He bought it because, yeah, man, if you become, from what I understand, because, I'm doing research to go there. Yeah, at this point, China is way ahead of us in electronic payment. And it's all through WeChat, and everybody's paying with their phone. And that was always his vision, to turn X into that. You think he's rich now? if he's able to pull that off, this is part of the whole plan. He took a chance and backed Trump, and he backed the right horse. Now he's got the ear of this guy who doesn't have any particular thoughts, convictions, knowledge, anything. You could tell this guy anything. Yeah, listen, I want from now on the government to take payments through X. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. We got two more stories on the night. So this is the penultimate segment of the evening. So go ahead. We're gonna hear from our friend.